My name is Carm Tedesco with Slow Food San Francisco, and welcome to the Childhood Obesity Conference of the Bay Area. We have a number of presenters today, and I'd like to start with Charlotte Dixon, who's Director of Local Policy from the California Center of Public Health Advocacy.
When I think about obesity, what I think about is it's a symptom of things gone awry in our society. The food system, which I know Slow Food is working very diligently on, our transportation system, the way that we've developed our suburban communities, all of those things, industrialization of food, too many calories, too many bad calories, no physical activity. Obesity is a symptom of things gone awry. And when we look at communities, when we look at a classroom of kids and 30% of them are overweight or obese, something is not happening in our community. It's a sign that something's not happening and that the things that families and people need to support health are not there. That's what it is. It's not about what someone looks like, their BMI. That's just not what it's about. Due to the rapid rise in obesity, today's youth may live shorter lives than their parents. And I have to tell you, traveling around the state, talking to elected officials, whether they're from very, very, very politically conservative communities in the high desert in the southeastern part of the state, or whether I'm talking to very, very, very liberal elected officials up in Humboldt County. This pierces people because what this is really is a betrayal of the values that our country was founded on. And I think people can agree whether they're Tea Party members, libertarians, Green Party members, members of the moderate Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. People agree on this. This is not what this country is about. Whether your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors came here last year, 20 years ago, 400 years ago, whether you are a Native American, this is not what this country is about at all. So there's a fundamental cost of obesity to our values as a nation, and I get a lot of traction out of this. Let me just talk a little bit about marketing. Some numbers were thrown around about the X billion dollars that the food industry spends marketing its products. 87% of the food and beverage ads on television that children are exposed to, I think it's 8 a day, are for foods that are high in fat, sugar, and salt. No surprise, right? Sugar-sweetened drinks, as I said before, they are the #1 source of calories in the American diet, single source of calories. So from my organization, we see that $500 million is spent marketing them to kids and adolescents, more than $1 million a day. And there's TV, there's increasingly digital marketing. If you really want to go crazy, go to a workshop on digital marketing and it will just blow your mind, the kind of stuff that the soda industry and the food industry is doing through Facebook, Twitter, and gaming. And then the product placement, American Idol. I watch American Idol. Who watches American Idol? It's a commercial for Coke, is what it is. This is an old ad. Like cigarettes, and I worked in the tobacco control movement for 10 years. Like cigarettes, Coke and soda has been marketed to us. It's part of the culture. My supervisor at CCPHA has a framed photograph in her office of the march on Birmingham, and you have Martin Luther King, and you have John Lewis, and you've got all those folks, and in the back is a Coke sign. And that says it to me. Talk about norms, Coke. So the Institute of Medicine is now, there are these 5 pillars, you might hear about them. We want to integrate physical activity every day in every way. So that's safe routes to school, walking to work, creating neighborhoods where you don't have to get in your car. Councilmember Jeff Ritterman is in the city of Richmond, and this week led an historic decision.
You know, it's amazing that our national problem is overconsumption. I think it's terrifically symbolic. We consume the wrong things and too much of them, and one of them is sodas. So pick one of these up from the back and come and help us in Richmond. On the back page, on the very, very bottom line, is my cell phone number. Call me up and be part of the solution. We're the only city in the country right now that has got this on the November ballot. If you live in any other city besides Richmond, call your city council member and tell them that you want them to put it on the ballot. They've already gotten an email from me if you're in Emeryville, Albany, Berkeley, San Leandro, Oakland, or San Francisco. If you're in a different city, write me, and I'll write them, and I'll send them all the stuff, because we can win more easily if we spread out the, you know, the soda industry, and they've got to cover a lot of area. Other thing is, I need to raise $100,000 to win this. We can win this, we can change the state. If you got ideas about money, you got a rich uncle, come and see me. Because we can really totally, and this will change child obesity. I just want to say one thing. There's a lot of talk about education. The public health data on education alone is dreadful. Education alone did not help us with people putting on seat belts or helmets or cigarettes. It always worked when we had a carrot and a stick. I'm giving you the stick. Let's do that everywhere together. Pick up one of these. Call me, join our movement, and California can be the first to do it. Because if we do it in Richmond, the dominoes will come tumbling down. A big thank you to Charlotte and her organization, because they've been with us right from the very beginning and helping us and advising us and explaining you know, the science to us. If you, and the science is totally fascinating, and I'd love to have the time to share that as well. So talk about preaching to the choir. Thank you for all being here. Come see me at the break, and I'd love for your individual efforts to be able to be part of a partnership with us and to push it all forward. And thank you for the opportunity.
So an article came out in Reuters recently about the politics of the White House and the food industry. I have not read the whole thing, but I think we're disappointed in what's happening. And so that's why it's very incumbent on us to take up this cause. It's great that the White House and Michelle Obama has created Let's Move, and I will say from my perspective, it's put some new blood and new energy in the obesity prevention movement, which was sort of starting to peter out in California, because in California we do everything 10 years before the rest of the country, and so we're kind of done and want to go to the next issue. But I will say that her emphasis on this problem has really reinvigorated many people, and kind of people who aren't so attuned to it. So I think that that's very, very important. And then there are some drawbacks and there's some politics there that are disappointing and that we need to take on. Yeah, I don't know, but I think this whole issue of marketing is key, and we do see that they're sort of on the run. And I don't know if any of you have seen the American Beverage Association ads where they have the people delivering the drinks, and they have less calories, but they still have calories. So we've got them on the run, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's more money being put out there. But I also think it's because in this society we have a movement. We have more attention being paid to it. Individuals are demanding more healthy choices. And the industry is starting to be in a more defensive mode, and we saw this with the same thing with the tobacco industry. So I think it's sort of a natural, the natural arc of the fight. And we are going to have the fight of the decade in Richmond. We are going to have the fight of the decade. The industry was at that council meeting. They had on the Secret Service little ear things with their phones, and they were running around like crazy. Only a few of them testified. They always try to put the small business owner up as their puppet, but they were there. They're going to be there, and you know, I'm hoping that we'll be tracking, you know, what they're going to be doing. So it's just the natural arc.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. I really appreciate that you brought in the human cost. I think that's a really crucial perspective to keep in mind. So over the next hour, we're going to break out into breakout sessions, and these are a chance for you to interface with your colleagues on more specific topics or learn about a topic that you're interested in. These should be an organic exchange of ideas about the challenges and developments in each field, and the breakout sessions are health disparities, youth empowerment, policy and economic incentives, and physical activity.
To get people to eat better and move more as part of daily life, not just a single program that they go to here and there, but as part of daily life, we need to be working on the goals of to decrease calorie consumption, increase fruit and vegetable consumption, increase physical activity in community settings, and increase physical activity in the institutional settings. And the other thing that we realized that was a profound awakening for us, and maybe seems very simple, but we were on the mantra of it has to be about policy change, it has to be about system change, it has to be about a built environment change, and we're still saying that. But what we've also learned is that if you build it, they don't necessarily come. There's a story from one of our sites in Colorado. They spent a lot of time and effort to put a bike rack at a school. I mean, it took really a lot of effort to get this done. And then it wasn't used. Nobody used it. There were pictures, these great pictures, before and after pictures, bike rack, no bike rack, empty bike rack. And, and so coming to the realization that you can't just put the bike rack there. You also have to do the encouragement, the education so that the parents feel safe letting their kids ride the bike. You have to give out the helmets to make sure that that community has the helmets. There's all kinds of other things that has to happen in addition to that bike rack. So we got a little bit of a better understanding of all of what I call the three legs of the stool. It's policy, systems, environmental change. It's also the education and skills and knowledge, because if I don't have the skill, if I don't know what is expected of me, what are the things that I need to do to be healthy, I can't be healthy. And if there's not, then the third leg of the stool is the community norms change. If my neighbor's doing it, and there's studies about this, if my neighbor's doing it, I'm more likely to do it. And it's that second degree of separation. If you know somebody who's doing it, you're more likely to do it. It's that, you know, the power of, you know, getting your friends out to walk with you is the simplistic version of it. But there's also this trending that happens, you know, and I think that's what we need to start building more consciousness around, that this is an expectation in our society, that children don't drink soda, that children do have healthy fruits and vegetables available to them. It's creating those expectations of ourselves. So this is what heal zones look like in phase 2, starting mid last year. We now have 7 communities. They are each receiving $1 million. They're still geographically defined with distinct boundaries. They're smaller populations, 10 to 20,000. They're located within Kaiser service areas. They're low-income, underserved populations, high rates of obesity, not hard to find. You could pick any community that would have met that criteria pretty much. And that there's a robust coalition and network of partners, and that the strategies are evidence-informed, and that they maximize reach and intensity. We call it dose. It's kind of a wonky little term, but what's the dose of the strategy, so that it does have a long-lasting impact, and that the reach is sufficient. And the example that I always give is you can give out 10,000 flyers at a health fair. That's not going to change anybody's behavior. You've got tremendous reach. You don't have a lot of impact. You can also have a 6-person cooking class for 20 weeks. It has tremendous impact on those 6 people, but your reach isn't very high and it's not very sustainable. So what are the strategies that blend those two? And they're hard to find. They're challenging, particularly with adults. Schools are a little easier because you have a captive audience, but for adults it's hard to find those strategies that are going to have that amount of dose. The other thing I want to talk about is about the Weight of the Nation campaign. And how many of you have heard of, been watching? Okay, so this is maybe preaching a little bit to people who already know about this. But I want to show a quick clip from Weight of the Nation that's kind of the summary piece, what's called the event reel. The reason Kaiser Permanente has been involved in this is all the reasons that I mentioned why this is important. And we have been a major partner along with HBO, the Institutes of Medicine, other foundations. And I think what we've brought to the table in this collaborative with HBO around this is that it can't just be a documentary on HBO that not everybody has. It has to be brought to the communities in different ways. And that's why there are things like the event kit. There's 40,000 event kits that have all of the DVDs. There's discussion guides. There's all kinds of great resources to use this as a tool to have this dialogue in the community about why this is important. And again, some of it is pretty alarming information that people may know, oh, there's an obesity problem, but when you get down to the statistics, it's a lot more relevant. I think one of the things about Weight of the Nation is that it does talk about the whole spectrum, and a lot of what was shown here was kind of the personal changes, but there's the fourth episode in particular, it talks a lot about kind of our socio-political structure that has caused the problem. It doesn't offer necessarily high solutions around, but things around the Farm Bill and how food is sourced and so forth. They go into great depth, and there's some really great stuff in the fourth episode. It doesn't necessarily say what needs to change about that. It doesn't make up a proposition about what needs to change about that, but it does a really good job of exposing the problems. So there's on the back Kaiser table, there's a sheet that explains everything about Weight of the Nation. It's the 4 documentaries plus 12 shorts, all of which are available online to stream. You can also order an event kit. There's all kinds of discussion guides and so forth, and I really encourage people to think about what are some of the venues that this might be useful. There's great stuff on the HBO website and on the Kaiser Permanente website, resources so that you're not having to make it all up, but bringing people together, not necessarily in volume, but who are the key stakeholders that you want to understand this better, to understand what the problems are and as a thought generator for what might be the solutions in your community.
Thanks so much, Catherine. So that was fantastic. Thank you.
We are having a break in the conference now, but I'd like to introduce Lorenzo Scarponi to discuss the Weight of the Nation film in which his daughter participated.
I've been very close to this making of HBO movies or chapters because my daughter is one of the child that have been interviewed as part of this documentary. But one thing is that's so different than any other ones before, any other channel or networking that have been made a documentary about films about obesity. This is, for me, the most compelling documentary film I have ever watched. It's a little long, but if you are involved and you know what's going on, and somehow you understand that they took so much time and pride to do this. It's really so much information, data, that you really will change your life for the future, because it did change myself and my family, even for my daughter, to make this film was stressful and not easy for teenagers to talk about the obesity, because probably with this conference this morning in the COBA, the lady wished that she would put a little bit more emphasize what the stress of teenager goes through, because it's been a child obesity conference. It's actually the most stressful for a teenager to deal with this with other students. So it's quite complex, but I encourage to watch this Weight of the Nation, because for your community gathering, a group of people, it's really important. The educational.
Well, thank you so much, Lorenzo, and we'll continue on with the conference.
Thank you. Thank you, Carmen.
I'd like to thank Lorenzo Scarponi for sharing his family's experiences with the Weight of the Nation film. Our next presenter is Sarah Fine, who's project manager with UCSF Youth Speaks Health Literacy Partnership Project.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about diabetes in California specifically and show you a map. So this is the diabetes prevalence in California counties. You'll see that the areas that are darker, where's my little clicker here? the areas that are darker, for example, these regions, these tend to be the poorer counties in California. As you'll see, the Bay Area, which is one of the wealthier counties, is not nearly as affected by the epidemic as some of the other counties. So this is something that's really pervasive amongst our state and our communities, and it's only getting worse. So let's take it down to a more local level. Let's talk about San Francisco specifically. This map shows the diabetes prevalence in specific neighborhoods of San Francisco. I want to take a second and really focus on which areas of this map are darker in color. So down here we have the Bayview, Outer Mission, Visitation Valley, Inner Mission, Soma, Haight-Ashbury. So you'll notice where diabetes prevalence is really housed in San Francisco, and it disproportionately affects low-income communities. All of the neighborhoods that have the highest diabetes rates, prevalence rates, are also all of the neighborhoods that have the highest rates of low-income population. The poorest neighborhoods have the highest rates of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. One stat to keep in mind is that living in a low-income neighborhood with limited access to healthy food, it increases one's chances of getting diabetes by 20%. So as you can see, there's a really strong relationship between income and type 2 diabetes prevalence, and it's evident at both the state and the county level. So let's go across. This is an image of a food access image of a store in Oakland, and we were talking about this actually in our breakout session, so I'm glad we get to come back to this point. As many low-income neighborhoods in the entire Bay Area, such as Oakland, which is featured in this slide, are underserved by healthy food retail. So you have limited access to healthy food, which is highly linked to obesity-related diseases such as type 2 diabetes. So this map kind of shows it on a greater scale. If you'll notice, all of these, let's use this, all of these little black circles mean that these stores or grocery stores have between 1 and 5 employees. So what type of stores are these? Right, corner stores, convenience stores, liquor stores, exactly. And the darker areas are where there's the highest poverty rate. So as you see here, look at all the corner stores and the convenience stores around the poor areas in Oakland. Now, see these little green crosses here? These represent supermarkets that have 51 plus employees, so a much larger scale of grocery stores and food access. And this slide is just really illustrating the relationship between the size of the store, the neighborhood's poverty level, and what kind of quality food access low-income residents really have. One stat that I wanted to highlight here is that from 1978 to 2009, the price increase for fresh fruits and vegetables was much more significant than the price increase for sugars, sweets, and carbonated drinks. And as we know, high sugar consumption often leads to type 2 diabetes. So we talked about where there's access to healthy food. Now let's look at diabetes in these same neighborhoods. I'm sure that you all notice a correlation here. The neighborhoods that are the poorest also have the highest diabetes hospitalization rates. Neighbors that have, let's go back. The neighborhoods that have the least access to healthy foods are the ones that have the highest diabetes hospitalization rates. So that's a clear barrier towards a healthy health outcome for anyone living in these communities, in these neighborhoods. All right, what's the relationship between type 2 diabetes and race and ethnicity? As you'll see, this slide's kind of old. It's from 2007, so it doesn't really adequately represent what the percentage increases have been in type 2 diabetes prevalence rates among all populations. What you'll notice is that it's definitely on the rise. And if this slide was from 2012, I think that we can all be pretty confident saying that the increase in type 2 diabetes rates would be much more marked. Today, and I believe this stat was mentioned by someone else, but I want to just reiterate, a white child born in 2000 has a 1 in 4 chance of developing diabetes over his or her lifetime. A Latino child, 1 in 3. And a black child, 1 in 2. On average, 1 in 3 children born before 2000 will get diabetes over the course of their lifetime. This is a really widespread epidemic. So what does the media have to say about all this? This is something that's been a little bit more present in the public dialogue and in the media. The New York Times recently had an article, I'm not sure if any of you saw it, that talked about diabetes, obesity, and also the youth's resistance to treatment. And a new study adds another worry. The disease progresses more rapidly in children than in adults and is harder to treat. So far there isn't evidence about why this is, but this is a very worrying piece of information. So what are we doing about all of this? First, they've got this situation of really high diabetes prevalence rates in youth. The New York Times is talking about how it's affecting more and more children and youth, that it's affecting, as you can see here, it's starting in much younger populations now than it was before. And it's really time to, one thing that we're working towards at UCSF Center for Vulnerable Populations in partnership with Youth Speaks is to address this great need in our communities. Now I'd like to invite James Cass to come up here and speak, the founder and executive director of Youth Speaks. Welcome.
What I'm going to get into is that part of the mission of the organization is to put young people, a diverse population of young people, at the center of the conversation around social change, positive social change. So what we're trying to do in the bigger picture campaign is really position young people throughout the state of California to be change makers in their community. So as we know, type 2 diabetes did not really exist as a disease 100 years ago. And now, as Sarah pointed out, it's an incredibly rising epidemic that's hitting pretty much every sector of the community. Physiologically, we as human beings have not changed in the last 100 years. The environment in which we live has changed. So for us, this is really an environmental conversation. And even Erica's piece, which is about individual behavior, it's also about the environment in which she grew up, both cultural and social, as well as geographical. And so it's about, the bigger picture campaign is ultimately about giving young people the tools to make change in their own lives, but also in the environments in which they live, being it's their own family dinner, be it it's the school that they're in, be it it's the community that they're in, be it it's the state. Does that make sense? So that's the bigger picture. It's the bigger picture because we want young people to look at the systemic things behind diabetes and really move it away from you're bad, you don't exercise, you don't eat right, it's your fault. So we still are about individual culpability, but it's also about behavioral change in regards to how you're going to step up to change your local environment. And that's the bigger picture campaign. When we first chose the initial, we've done 2 series of intensive workshops to develop the peer educators. When we first chose the population of the first workshop was 8 young people. We chose it, frankly, based on their demographic diversity because we wanted young people who mirrored the diversity of the state of California, largely in terms of ethnicity and gender. Had no idea their relationship to diabetes. It turned out that every single person in the room, including me, had a direct relationship with somebody in their family who is suffering from diabetes. So just a random sample of kids pulled from the large population that Youth Speaks work with, every single buddy had a relationship directly in their family to diabetes. So let's bring up Jade Cho.
Hi, everybody. So this is a piece. It's actually also been turned into a PSA, a video. I haven't seen it yet. Apparently, it's cool. I don't know. But yeah, so it's called the Food Justice Manifesto, and it's based on the Black Panther Party's 10-point platform. 1, we want an end to type 2 diabetes in young people. We believe that by causing diabetes, greed-blinded corporations and deficient living conditions are directly responsible for blinding, maiming, and killing thousands annually. This disease overwhelmingly devastates poor people of color. 1 in 3 Latino children and 1 in 2 Black children born in 2000 will develop diabetes in their lifetime. This is no longer our grandparents' disease, but a reality of heart attack, severed limbs, and impotence many of us will face in the next 10 years, if we do not hold the food industry and government responsible for their crimes. We believe by sharing our stories, organizing our communities, petitioning the government, and bettering our lifestyles, we can determine the future of our health and communities. 2, we want affordable, healthy food fit for consumption by human beings. We believe that health should not have a price tag. The quality food should be available in all schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods. Today, a bunch of broccoli costs more than a full meal at a fast food restaurant. There are no grocery stores in poor neighborhoods, but liquor stores and fast food restaurants on every block. These are not conditions in which we can expect to live long, healthy lives. 3, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of the decadent American food industry. We believe it is our right to know where our food comes from and how it is made. What animal does a hot dog come from? What exactly is disodium guanylate? The food industry sells us healthy brands and options made from the same corn products with the same sugar content by the same 4 major corporations. We believe that when we educate ourselves and our communities and, through boycotting and media pressure, force the food industry to be more transparent, these artificial foods will no longer be accepted. 4, we want safe spaces in our communities to exercise and play. We believe it is the individual's responsibility to maintain physical fitness. However, it is nearly impossible for those of us who live in neighborhoods without safe streets or parks and playgrounds, where the nearest substitute is often inside a fast food restaurant's playpen. Recreational facilities are readily available in wealthy neighborhoods, while abandoned fenced-off lots dot the landscape of low-income communities. We demand the redistribution of local government funds to make these basic resources available to all communities across California, regardless of income. 5, we want you to take action. We believe that in accordance with the above demands, it is the individual's right and duty to take steps towards making these beliefs reality. We believe the revolution is yours to lead.
Let's give it up for Jade one more time. We're standing on the corner between healthy and heart attack, not sure which way to cross. On one side, organic grocery, the other, deep-fried death. Our bodies pull us away from the produce aisle, ignoring the question of just what part of a chicken is a nugget anyway. Every bite a last meal telling us this is just temporary. But greener, more nutritional options are right across the street, yet our bodies demand mechanically processed meat. Water costs more than milk. When broccoli costs more than beef, they want a pound of flesh for every 90 pounds of sugar we eat in a year. Our whole block is at this trough, thinking we're full, before meeting back on the corner, starving for our next meal. They turned our bodies into battlefields, turned our cookbooks into combo meals, and told us to drive through. And my wallet says to supersize it. We can tell you 5 different paths to the deep fryers that sizzle past midnight. Nobody dares to turn off their neon lights, but their cheap digestible cyanide turns my kiss into snake bites. Take an x-ray of my guts and you'll see the proof is in the pudding. When our bodies turn our fashion into misery, when our ankles become cankles, when our blood is a stained sewer that circulates in our bodies. Only gangrene amputees will be our legacy, corporate-sponsored deadly delicacies. How much longer must we fight the battle before we lose the war to diabetes here on the corner between healthy and heart attack, life or stroke, because we don't want to end up on the corner pricking our thumbs with a lancet to figure out how much sugar we need to survive every day? How much longer must we eat this edible recipe before we end this misery and rewrite the recipe? Thank you, guys.
The way that this project is going to unfold in the next couple of months and really kicking off and ramping up in the fall 2012 to 2013 school year is we're going to be going into public schools in the Bay Area. Initially 5 in San Francisco and 5 in the East Bay, mostly in Oakland. These are going to be public high schools. And this similar format of this visit of performances at larger school assemblies and then broken down into smaller workshops with teachers is going to be carried out in schools. And James was mentioning some of the resources, such as the toolkit, and other online opportunities for students to really engage and participate in the campaign. So it's not really geared towards patients, it's really going to be geared towards high school, public school students.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that idea, a lot of our, when the stats came out, I think in our workshops, it was like half of it was dedicated towards information and just learning about how things changed in the 70s with corn subsidies and how like people didn't look this way in the 1950s, you know what I mean? And how obesity is a modern, very modern problem. A lot of it was like Jade said, was like connecting with our families first. Like Drew Vai, one of our main poets, was talking about his father and how he, when we learn the term lancet and we learn these things, then they're like, oh, that's what my dad uses every night and things like that. And then specifically when we talk about environments, one of the most pivotal things that changed our thoughts on this, I think I can speak for Jade on this as well, is the map about San Francisco and the density of where diabetes is. And then we talk about that, or in Oakland, and you talk about how there's not a grocery store in West Oakland that we can really think of off the top of our heads. We can tell you where the corner store is, but we don't know I don't know if there is a grocery store in West Oakland anymore, if at all. In East Oakland, I can probably count it on a couple hands. But I don't know, I mean, those are the things, like when it strikes home, and I think when kids see the map of their cities and the density of diabetes in correlation with the economic conditions that I think they're already very much aware of, I think at large, a lot of young people are already affected by these issues, but just don't realize how the eccentricities of it. So I think people already feel it. So when they see the PSA, or like James said earlier, when they hear Erica do the poem, they really relate to it from the dinner table to the block to wherever they are. Like, it's kind of, they already see it, and then this is just the catalyst to kind of open the eye even wider.
Great, thanks. So please fill out that survey. That's going to be really helpful. And I also didn't get to mention it, but just so you have a perspective of what a great organization Youth Speaks is, they are the leading spoken word youth development and arts and education nonprofit program in the entire world. And they have programs outside of the Bigger Picture campaign, so I would highly recommend checking them out. So thank you. Thank you so much for attending. Please use the time now that's left. We have 15 or 30 minutes with the space. Please use it to visit all the organization tables that you didn't get to visit. And they're here with information about how to get involved, and there's a ton of ways to get involved. Thank you so much to our volunteers for your support, and again to our sponsors and our speakers. And a huge thank you to you for attending and participating so actively today. We really appreciate it. And that's pretty much it. We really look forward to gathering again in the fall for our next COBA event. So thank you.